actually, is there?
Yeah, so Ian, if you could just talk about that for a couple of seconds here, because we've had a lot of customers that are starting to, they hear it from one company or a different installer, and then they're looking at the data sheet on the Enphase IQ8 Plus, and it shows that there's whatever it is. I think that the DC rating on it is whatever 350 or 80 or something along the lines of that, and they're saying, well, we have a 405, and this doesn't make sense, and the numbers don't add up, and this micro is going to be a better compatibility for my system rather than the 8 Plus based off
Right.
of what they're seeing online.
Yeah, yeah. We've always kind of struggled with module compatibility, or struggled with communicating module compatibility to homeowners in the market, because it's complicated. Like, if you have a panel that's generating 400 DC watts, it's very difficult for the average homeowner to understand why you would put an IQ 8 plus, which is 300 watts, on that. Why, like, where is all that power going? And we all know that, we lose power because it's not sunny sometimes, or there's, bird stuff on the roof, or there's shading. There's all kinds of environmental factors that create a mismatch from DC to AC. And so we tend to think about it in terms of a DC to AC ratio. So if you do the math, we want to be somewhere between like 1.2 and 1.5 when we're matching up. So if you do, what's your panel wattage today? Like, it's like 400, right?
405, yeah.
Yeah. So if you do 405 divided by 300, which is our IQ 8 plus rating, that's 1.35. So that's falling kind of like right into the sweet spot of where we want to see DC AC pairings. And so, the vast majority of the market, installer wise, they get this. Most installers are using something around 400 watts. And therefore the majority of the market at this point is the 8 plus. I think there are some instances where installers are trying to get a competitive advantage by creating their own narrative and saying, well, why would you put 300 watts on a panel that's generating 400? You're leaving money and power on the table. The reality is that's just not true, because of the environmental factors I spoke about. And then also, we really want the inverters to be at their max production as often as possible. So we want as much DC coming in as we can handle, so that the inverter is generating 300 watts, most of the time, because that is where the peak efficiency happens for the inverter. If we're producing only 200 watts, then we're not getting the most efficient production out of that inverter. So if we look at, and how do I share screen on GoToMeet, whatever this is, on Zoom?
Yeah, if you hover over the bottom, there's a little green arrow in the middle of it that
I
says
got you.
share.
Okay. So let me just show you guys. Let me just jump to the website so you get a sense of like what the different options are. And for anybody that's curious, if you just go to enphase.com and then you hover over installers, or you click installers at the top here, if you can see my cursor, these are all the possible things you would ever want to look up when you're asked questions about Enphase products. And so in this case, like, we want to talk about microinverters. So we click over that, and it kind of runs through the value proposition of the micros, talks about all the different varieties. This is a really good resource if if you have an iPad, you're at the kitchen table, and you want to just jump right to something and show off Enphase products, you can use this. But what I wanted to show you is that we do have a number of different microinverter types. And I can jump there here in a second. Where is sorry. Okay. So if we click.
While you're looking for that, does Enphase offer a pairing recommendation sheet, like that's Enphase branded, that you would send out to installers saying, like, we recommend for these panels this micro?
No, we don't. We leave it a little bit up to interpretation, because, again, each system may have different design elements, right? You might have a system that's, perfectly south facing and it doesn't have any shading, and it may be to the designer's discretion which microinverter they want to select for that particular location. So we don't, we put a range on each of these data sheets to give people a sense of what, the DC pairing could look like. But, if we roll through it, you'll get a sense of kind of where we're at versus some of the other ones. And so if we clicked into, again, at the top of the microinverter tab, there's all the generations of inverters. So we go into IQ8. We click on the IQ8 Plus, and then it's going to pull up basically our web store. But here it's got all of the possible information that you'd want: details, tech specs, what's in the box, documentation, warranty, etc. And the first thing we learn about the IQ8 Plus is, under the details, is that it's going to output 300 watts or 295 watts under the tech specs, right? So our peak output is 300 watts. We can then toggle to the M, and this is just so you guys can do a comparison for yourselves. You can click over to the M, which is sort of the next power class up, and do the same thing, just going under the technical specifications. And you can see here, we now jump to 330 watts. And it's suggesting an input power of 260 to 460. So it leaves it really broad based and open ended, which might not be exactly the right thing for us to do. Like, maybe we should be narrowing this a little, but it's going to depend again on environment and like engineering selection. So we do have to keep it somewhat. So in this case, it's 235 to 440. So there's really not a huge difference in range. But the reality is, if you jump to an IQ8M and you're looking at 330 peak watts, well, then your ratio of 405 over 330, which is our DC to AC ratio, it drops to 1.22, which is right in the area that we sort of recommend. We say 1.2 to 1.5. But previously you were at like 1.27, or what was it? 405 divided by 300, 1.35. I personally think that driving that ratio a little bit higher is for the better, because again, you're gonna generate more power on days like today. I don't know if it's sort of cloudy down there, but it is up here. When you don't have as much available sunlight, you're gonna generate more power using that smaller microinverter. The kilowatt hour output that you might harvest with the M or any of the higher wattage output inverters, I don't know that increased benefit of energy value is going to make up for the cost, because the M is going to be $15 higher per microinverter than the 8 Plus. So on an average system, that's 30 times, call it $15. That's $450. It's pretty unlikely that you're going to generate $450 worth of additional kilowatt hour harvest over 15-20 year period. So I guess my point is I think there are some installers trying to create a narrative for themselves by selecting the M, or the A would be ridiculous, because this one is going to generate 366 watts, which is just way too much AC power on the table for a 400 watt panel. I would never recommend this, because now you're at 405 divided by 366. Your ratio is too low. It's 1.1 instead of what we deem to be a good minimum at 1.2. So you'll be operating, in this case, under the peak value almost all the time, and therefore you're never going to be at the highest end of the efficiency production curve.
So it's really only like with peak, pure peak input, basically, with the power, that it would make a difference. So basically what you're saying is the 80% or 90% of the time, those panels are not working at 100% efficiency. So by doing it 1.5 times the actual, let's say that ratio that you were using, mathematically over 365 days of the year, it's going to fall within that range. So probability wise, it's going to be working, spot on. Maybe that 10% of the days or 15% of the days it won't be doing it, but overall, it'll cover that range. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, you'll have, look, with the 8 Plus, on a 400 watt panel, our goal is to drive that thing to the max on the best days. And if you're not doing that, if you're not just blowing through the ceiling on the production in the fall and the spring, we have a nice, cool, sunny day, and you've massively oversized the inverter, and you're not taking advantage of the high end of the production yield curve when it comes to performance. So, you can make the argument actually that the 8 plus on a 400 watt panel might outproduce the 8A because the 8A is so high, is like way too, the pairing there is too high for the AC, and it'll never produce at its highest efficiency capability.
So what you're saying is, so like when it's not on a cloudy day, the IQ8 Plus will outperform the A. It's going to generate more power, correct? Or is it the same? It's just that you're looking at it at a cost basis.
Yeah. So yes, on a cloudy day, because you're at the higher end of that 8 plus efficiency curve, it should outproduce the 8A would be my, that's sort of the thinking here.
Yeah, I agree with Ian on that 100%. And this goes back to a lot of even the older DC systems. This is how we used to build old DC systems. You want to drive that inverter as hard as you possibly can on a daily basis to perform. And I know a lot of you guys about this as well.
Got it.
Yeah, so then and you start to get into the 8H, which is another offering. I mean, then we're just so far out of the ballpark here, right? This is a 384 watt micro inverter. I mean, we don't sell many of these, to be honest with you guys, and I don't see any installers using this product because it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't know of a module like readily available in the marketplace that can kind of handle this thing. Maybe some 72 cell like 480, 500, but even that, I just don't know who's doing that.
Yeah, I mean, is this used for like small commercial? I don't even know. That's small commercial.
It's a weird one because it's really only for split phase. This thing doesn't even work.
Wow.
I mean, we have this 208 version, but it doesn't work for 3-phase anyway. It's 208 single phase grid tie only applications.
Jesus.
So it's a kind of a weird one. And honestly, we don't sell a lot of these H's. I would say, the IQ8A might mix in a little bit here and there. Starting to see more of the M's as the wattage gets to like 420 plus. But you guys are telling me you're doing 405s. And so I don't see any reason for you to move up to the M from a yield perspective. You're just not going to get more out of it. So, and I just anecdotally looking across like the Massachusetts market, most people are right where you guys are at with a 400 watt. And, we have literally no M's being installed, in this market because of that.
Can I ask a dumber question? I'm one of the newer kids on the block. Can you explain to me the split phase versus the single phase that was on there?
Yeah, definitely. So, Axe should probably answer this one being better versed in it, but
yeah, you don't have to worry about split phase. Every home in our area, for the most part, and I'm going to say there's random ones that are 3-phase, like in Westchester, Yonkers area, we're working single phase. Every house is single phase. You'll see that more. You'll see like split phase, 3-phase more in the city. Older buildings, small commercial buildings will have that. But
is that multiple meters?
What's that? No, multiple.
Does that mean multiple meters?
Does not matter. No, it's what's coming off the street. It's the street power. So we're single phase. I want to say 97% of the time we're in single phase territory. So that's really all you guys have to worry about. If you run across a house that is like a converted manufacturing plant that they made into a really cool lofty home, that may have 3-phase or split phase in it, but like for the most
part. What does that mean though, Ak?
What?
What does single phase mean?
Single phase is 240 volt and 3-phase is 208. You would basically have, in the easiest way possible, you have a phase A and a phase B with single phase, right? So you have 120 volt and 120 volt, A and B, and that's 240 volts on a single phase. So that's common in every home. 3-phase is when you have a third leg now that is A, B, and C, and you have multiple phases throughout, multiple voltages throughout that. So you have 120, 120. You go between the two, you'll have 208.
Got it. Cool. Thanks.
It's for heavy equipment. when you have in manufacturing and stuff, and you have heavy equipment that need like large loads and you're manufacturing shit, you need that extra leg of power to power up that equipment. We don't see that in homes.
All right, so I think my question is going to be more geared towards the equipment that we're moving towards and how that's going to impact our microinverter selection. So we're talking about, for the last few weeks, about the REC 420 panel, but we're having to opt for an IQ7 technology. How are we going, and is there a plan for Enphase to bridge the gap to get to that 420 panel production? And what's the limiting factor on that 420 panel that means that we can't use one of these higher production modules?
So
Yeah.
Ian, you want to talk on that? But it's the cell technology really that's the driving factor here.
Yeah, so the REC panel is a little bit of a weird one because it's higher voltage than anything else out there in the market. And maybe the market all shifts to that technology, but we don't really see that from other vendors, manufacturers. So here's the IQ7 family, and we're basically resurrecting what's called the IQ7X to help pair up with this higher voltage panel. And we've always had an X version of all of our generations, including like the 6. There was other, prior versions of the M would pair up with the higher voltage stuff. And that tended to be like SunPower, which you guys are familiar with in your past. And then also Panasonic had like a higher voltage module. And basically all that is like a higher cell count. So the more cells you have, the higher the voltage stacks. Like each cell running in series runs the voltage higher and higher. That's why, a 72 cell module has a higher voltage than a 60, and we tend to install 60. Or in this case 66 with REC, but there is a higher voltage in this one. We don't, because they pivoted so quickly to this technology, we didn't have a lot of time to try to get development on an IQ8. At this point, I don't have a timeline where the IQ8X version of this will hit the market. So as long as you guys are pitching as long as you guys are pitching the that REC panel, you're going to have to use the IQ7X microinverter. It's going to do basically the same thing. I mean, the only thing it's limiting you from is, selling a sunlight backup scenario, which, at this point, I don't know how much of that you're doing anyway. So
None.
Yeah, exactly. So there's really no difference other than some design considerations when you're selling a battery. You may have to use some PV shedding, or you may just have to size the battery, to match the amount of PV that you're selling. But other than a design consideration, it's going to pretty much do the same thing in an Enphase microgrid environment. Now I understand there's certainly a stigma around, well, why am I getting a 7 and there's like 8s out there? I don't know how to overcome that other than anybody else pitching the REC brand will be offering that same exact pairing.
Cool. Any other questions for Ian on this before we move to our next topic, or?
So are we strictly using that IQ7 with the REC 405s? Is that what's the bottom line?
No, with the 420, which we haven't really rolled out, is if we move to that 420 REC panel, we're going to start using 7X. Every job right now is getting 8+.
Okay.
Yeah, every job you guys are selling, whether it's a 385 or 395 or a 405, is getting 8+.
Okay.
We're not ready to pull the trigger on that 420 just at this moment in time. Cool. Cool. I know Ian wanted to discuss some of the great things that are happening right now with Enphase on the battery side. So there's some updates, some programs that we're gonna release to you guys, which will definitely help with sales. So Ian, you wanna kind of dive into that?
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you. So just first and foremost, you guys have probably, how many folks have sold a battery? Pretty much everyone. Okay, so the majority of folks on the line have sold a battery, and you probably run into some return visits by your install crews and maybe some homeowners that have had a like less than stellar experience in every case. That's kind of battery in general. Enphase really isn't an exception to that rule. So I recognize that you've probably had to deal with some homeowners that are like, hey, how come this thing didn't turn over when the grid failed? Like, why are you sending a tech back to like reprovision this? Like, everything I'm saying hopefully is probably like lining up with your experience, or not hopefully, but is probably lining up with your experience. And so that's the backdrop of this conversation, which is like we've made a ton of progress on number one, commissioning times, which you guys don't really feel that, but your crews certainly do. So when they go out and do a new battery project, it could have taken multiple hours to get that thing up and running online and like producing power. And now, we've reduced that time, pretty significantly through some firmware updates to our entire fleet. And then also updating a couple of the products before they actually hit the market, including the Envoy and the system controller too. So with those updates and with some of the improvements to the installer toolkit app that your guys are using in the field, again, the commissioning times have reduced a lot. Reliability around the product switching when the grid fails and doing that the way it's supposed to has gotten much better. And then the general communications within the system has improved significantly. And that was also an issue. So if you had a problem with a system controller being too far away from the batteries, or just not communicating properly with the batteries in the Envoy, some of that communication error has improved a lot. So I feel better about where we are today with the product and the experience and the homeowner experience than I did even like a couple months ago. So with that, we're really trying to push sales of battery in the first half of 2023. And we went out to we're in the process of going out to select installers who have done an excellent job selling this product for us, you guys being top of the list for me, and wanting to kind of offer you an incentive to continue to sell and maybe even accelerate some of those sales in the second quarter, like starting today or starting next week into kind of the second quarter of 2023. So Matt and I have sat down and developed kind of a target, a kilowatt hour target for the company, and Enphase is putting some money behind it, so that you guys can structure kind of a sales incentive to feel like it makes sense to go out and talk about this on every occasion, hopefully to earn some extra money on all these sales that actually happen or that are actually deployed in Q2. So the battery itself would need to be purchased by the company and not necessarily installed, but purchased in the second quarter, and then you guys as individual reps would be paid out per sale. And Ak, you can maybe provide some of the finer detail on how the numbers work.
Yeah, sorry guys, I had to just step out of the room for a second. I don't know if you were calling on me. Yeah, so I missed what you said. So you went into the $1,000 or the $500.
Yeah, I didn't get granular on the per system amounts just because I wanted to maybe let you guys, I didn't want to misspeak. So yeah, if you've got the final detail on that, you can share it. But I basically kind of said, hey, this thing's getting better and we want to incentivize everyone to sell more now and then get counted for that in Q2.
Yep. So we're breaking it down at it's $1,000 rebate per 10 kW, right?
Correct. Yep.
So we're gonna split it. We're gonna go $500 to you guys as a reps per 10 kW and $500 to the company as savings on that system.
Yeah, and that's great. So if you can promote that to the end user, then it's nice, because again, like you guys are one of few for me that are actually able to kind of go do this thing and be sponsored by Enphase. So it should be a nice competitive advantage in the market. Should be a great way to if you really crush it, to earn a few thousand extra dollars. And there's no cap to this. So however many you guys purchase as a company in Q2 is the amount that you guys get paid out, for this particular program.
Does it have to be 10 kW?
Yes.
Yeah, as a minimum, Ak, is that where you landed on it?
Yeah, that's where we want to be, honestly. And honestly, guys, and the reason I'm going to say yes to this, especially, is because we're falling into this trap a little bit more and more. Your customers they have expectations and they want to back up X, Y, and Z. And when we're telling them, they're getting a 3.3 kW battery, and we're telling them that they can only do X amount of loads, they're like, well, I want more, and I want this, I want that. So in order to make this like really work well, and every customer so far with the 10 kW battery has been happy with their systems more than anybody that has had anything smaller than that. So for us to promote this, I really want to push on that 10K.
Yeah, and I agree with that sentiment. I mean, if I look across the board of my installers, I think that's where most people are kind of landing on it. It's just like it's so much overhead to go in and really just end up with a 3 kWh battery for a homeowner. While it could fit a particular budget, to Axe point, it doesn't always meet the expectation of the homeowner, because as soon as they get it, they just think, oh, I got a battery. It's like, I'm just run everything. Even though you've probably told them a million times and had them sign an affidavit like, hey, this is only going to run your fridge. It's only going to run this. They very quickly forget that when the storm hits and they're just like, hey, I just want to turn everything on. So I do think a 10 kWh baseline is good. And then it kind of propels you guys into that $500 category immediately. If you sell 2, that's great. If you sell 3 or 4, that's amazing. And it opens up a bigger opportunity for everyone. Yeah. So that's that. Are there any questions on the detail of this, the timing, et cetera?
Yeah, I have a question. How about the generator support, the integration of the generator and commission? Because I know we've shied away from any battery projects with generators, and that's primarily because of the commissioning, right? Is that gotten better too in some of the improvements, Ian?
I can't speak to that 100% because we don't do a ton of them, frankly. So theoretically, yes, because the toolkit has improved, because the system controller 2 and the Envoy are now preloaded with software.
Right.
A lot of that time that was going to be taken to do those things is gone. So presumably that experience is better than it was. But you guys at this point, I know you've done some of these, so you would know better, frankly, than we do on that.
It's just the website is like, if you're gonna use the website, and some of the engineering clients, some of the more assholios, the website is very clearly says generator support. So, it's really marketing it. So when I go after a project to a client who wants a battery, but they also have a generator, and I say, hey, we can't do it, the confidence factor goes down because the website clearly says it's seamless. So
I'd like to say something on that point.
Yeah.
All right. So from my calls with Enphase, and I know Ian is some of the engineers that I've spoken to, we have discussed this, and it is available now. I chose to not roll it out to our jobs, and reason being, and not to shit on what we've had in the past. We had some issues with newer rollouts with the system controllers and batteries. So I just want to see how others are seeing it happen. I don't want to be the first to start unloading that, and then we have customers that are not happy about production, or something's going wrong and the commissioning's not right, breakers are tripping, whatever it may be. So I'm slow rolling this option. Also, you guys have to really remember, it only works with certain types of generators. So Enphase has a list of model numbers and generator types and brands that work with the system controller too. So not every generator, just because they have one at their house, it could be old as dirt, will not be compatible with the system controller.
Yeah.
So I'm just waiting a little. I'm giving it a little time to see how this pans out, and then we will, Dana. We are gonna release this, but I'm just not ready yet.
Understood. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes like homeowners have these massive generators because they're trying to do like massive whole home backup. And then, we come in with a PV plus storage system, and our max input's like 100 amps. And a lot of these generators are like 200, crazy size. And so that tends to be the problem, is like, they're already operating under the pretense of like, hey, we back our huge house up with this generator. It's not a good matchup for the system the way it stands.
Yep.
Hey, Ian, just to go back to the, when you were doing that ratio, do they actually have numbers in terms of like over, let's say a 365, day period where it would be, let's say, going back to the IQA versus an A and the M, where the percentage in terms of when it's actually getting that max output, is there numbers on that? Do they have any statistical data to show clients to back that out? So in other words, it's like maybe 5%, 8% versus XYZ.
Yeah, I don't think that exists. But we do have a like module kind of sizing tech brief that is not up to speed with the current generation. Like I don't think we revved it for the 8s. I think it's possibly as old as the IQ6, but it talks about expected performance and expected gain with like varying sizes of DC wattage input on like a couple of our different microinverter models. I can try to dig that sheet up and share with you guys. The principle holds obviously for the 8, but it doesn't talk specifically about the 8 plus versus like the 8A, and then these, this DC wattage versus that DC wattage, and what the expected performance would be in varying geographies. Like it has like New York and Phoenix, California. It's got a bunch of different locations. So I can share that with you, and maybe that'll help kind of frame the conversation with a homeowner. It probably ends up losing them because it is so techy, but it could help you guys in developing the narrative.
It is so specific to where your location is too, I mean, it's going to vary between somebody in Arizona compared to somebody in Poughkeepsie, New York, so.
Yeah, let me actually, here it is. So let me do this. I'll throw it in the chat right now. And you guys can use that as you see fit. You guys have any other questions? Battery related? Any tech, I don't know, sort of like competitive stuff you run into with the battery?
Any suggestions on like just generic recommendations on what battery to use? Because I know I use the online system a lot, and I feel like lately most of the time it just tells me it tells me 10 or 20 on most jobs. Any like generic, if they're using this much power to use this or anything like that at all? Or is the online system pretty darn accurate and go by that?
It is accurate, but it tries to be so specific, like it'll be like, oh, you need like 16 kilowatt hours to manage this. It's like at that point, just round up. Like I think if you just think in your head about increments to 10 kilowatt hour, not only does it look better and sort of like frame better in a sales environment, but it also, like, when in doubt, add more power, I think is really what it comes down to. And anybody like buying storage right now, isn't doing it because they want to save money, obviously, right? So they're like, they've got something in their head about, I need to back up my house. I'm going to like take home equity out, or I've got cash that I want to do this. And like, that's bottom line. So like presenting more power and to do more, oftentimes just like that'll happen naturally because this is like a very discretionary buy.
Cool.
Sweet.
Cool. Guys,
When do we get
everyone
the
kind of
stock,
understands.
Ian?
What's that?
I was just wondering when we get our stock.
Oh, there you
Yeah, that should be the winner of the contest gets like
go. There you go.
the Enphase, yeah.
But does everyone kind of understand what the promo is? So every 10 kW you guys sell is $500, right? Like, just in your commission, it's an extra $500 when you guys sell a 10 kW battery. The other $500 will go to our promos, and we're going to market this pretty heavily through social. So you're going to see a good amount of this on our social media. You're going to see it on our Facebook. We're going to be pushing it pretty hard.
Sweet.
That's 10K plus, right?
10K. Yep. That's
So if we sell three 10K, we get $1,500.
Well, it's $3,000. Yeah.
Is it?
Well,
Hold on.
yeah, it is. It's 500 per 10 kilowatt hour battery. So if you sell a 4, if you max it out, it's a $2,000 bonus.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And everyone does know, I know there's been talk in the past that we used to discuss like 3 was the maximum batteries we could do. We can go up to 4. 4 10 kWs is the max.
Can we get that changed in the system, Hack?
Is it not in the system? Yeah, we can do
Those
that.
3 last I saw.
Okay.
Not that it's common, but
Yeah, I don't think we've done one of those yet.
I had a guy that wanted it. I told him 3 though.
Oh, you did? Shit. My bad.
You go back to him, sell him another one.
There you
I
go.
know, right? Your 130 grand loan wasn't enough. Here's some more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts. People want to spend on battery. I never thought we'd see the day when you could get like, an $8,000 generator or spend, 40 grand on a battery, and people just want to do the battery.
Hey, Ian, I got a question for you, and we have spoken about it, but I'd like to bring it up to the group. And I mean, more and more EVs are in people's homes. Are we going to see Enphase being able to accept battery backup by their vehicles?
Yeah, we're gunning for it. We as you guys probably know, we made an acquisition of Clipper Creek. Does that name ring a bell for anybody?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So Clipper Creek is a 15, 20-year-old battery charging level 2 charging station company out of California. And they've got a great track record of high quality car chargers. So Enphase made this purchase of the company, I don't know, like a year ago, maybe a little less. And our plan is to do 2 things. One is to enable integration into Enlighten, which is simple, right? So like you can control the discharge rate, discharge percentage of the car from your phone using the Enphase app. You could start charging, stop charging. You can really see like what's going on through the Enphase app, which is nice. That will happen. It's not quite integrated yet, so that's kind of Q1, or I guess we're in Q1. So that's supposed to be this year at some point. And then part 2 of that is, partnering up with the leading EV companies out there, because frankly, a lot of this technology, the inverter is built into the car, right? So like every Tesla car has their proprietary inverter that does the AC/DC conversion. So we really need to be able to leverage like essentially AC coupling with these third-party inverters that are living in these vehicles. So it does require a lot of development with like Toyota or Ford or whoever the car company is that we're trying to partner with to get kind of a bi-directional capability with our system. Like that integration is difficult. We're working hard, and I would imagine in the next 2 to 3 years we'll have something kind of ready. But today you can start with the charger. Just get the hardware, and have your homeowners install the charger. I mean, like, I don't think enough people are really pitching it, honestly. I think for every solar system you put in, if they don't have a car charger, you might as well get them going, because they will have an EV at some point, and they will probably require more solar down the line. So you can see the here, I'll share the. Let me share my screen one more time.
Ian, is Clipper Creek co-branded yet with Enphase or not yet?
Yeah, I believe that we started shipping out the co-branded version. So again, if you're at enphase.com, you can go to the installers tab, and then you can see EV chargers right here in the middle. And so this is the Clipper Creek gear. So this still shows it having the Clipper Creek logos. My understanding was we were going to be switching that over to Enphase. When you guys get a chance, so you can read through this landing page, and it talks about the technology. And really, car chargers are pretty basic. There's not a lot to them today. However, to Ack's point, that's hopefully going to change as we create these development opportunities and enable discharge of car battery into the home as a backup solution.
Cool. Awesome, man. I know guys you guys are going to start hopping off. You got meetings coming up. Anyone have any other questions for Ian while we got him?
Thanks a ton, Ian. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks guys, and appreciate your support selling these things, and good luck, and hopefully you guys can maximize this as much as possible. There's no cap.
All right, brother. Enjoy. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys. Any other questions before we jump off? No, guys, you always know you can call me if you need anything. Let's get some deals wrapped up. Let me know what you need. I'm available.
Eric, I'm gonna call you.
No, Dana, I'm busy right now.
I know,